I was hearing all this amazing anecdotal evidence from friends of mine who had cancer, who were being prescribed by their doctor, mainstream doctors, to go get a sauna, about 40 minutes to 45 minutes of saunas per week. It reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and most diseases by up to like 40, 50%. An infrared sauna, though, is completely different. It uses infrared wavelengths. Certain types of infrared are great for skin health. Others penetrate your body at a cellular level. It's basically switching your cells on.
Hello, beautiful questers, and a warm welcome to the OneQuest podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us on this journey of learning and self-discovery.
Whether you're unwinding, seeking a moment of peace, or just indulging in some well-deserved you time, we're here to sprinkle a little joy and a whole lot of inspiration into your day. Our guests are not just mentors in wellness and self-improvement, they are adventurers at heart, dreamers in spirit and storytellers by nature, sharing their unique paths and life lessons. So let's embark on this tapestry of tales together.
Be prepared for moments that move you, narratives that nurture, and reflections that resonate with your own journey. Before we dive in, if you enjoy our show, please subscribe and share. Your support enables us to feature more amazing guests and deliver impactful conversations. Together, we can inspire a billion lives. Please note that some episodes may cover sensitive topics like abuse, mental health struggles, and personal challenges. If you find the content overwhelming, feel free to step back and take care of yourself. Remember, it's okay to pause and return when you're ready.
Welcome to our Infinite Potential podcast, hosted by OneQuest. Today we have Neil O'Sullivan with us. A little bit about Neil. He is a dynamic entrepreneur and mental health advocate. He co-founded Nimbus Co in 2016 with his wife, Sue. He was inspired by his own battles with autoimmune conditions and the MTHFR gene to create innovative health solutions. With over 17 years of experience in corporate marketing and digital content, Neil has led CBS's Asia Global Digital Marketing and co-founded 2 mental health charities. He also co-hosts the popular podcast These Lads Are Mental. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And starred in ABC's Space 22 documentary exploring the impact of art therapy on mental health. Neil's journey is characterized by his commitment to ethical values, preventative healthcare, and making well-being accessible to all. So thank you very much, Neil, for joining us.
A bit of a mouthful, isn't it, that story?
That was the shortened version.
No, love it. Nice. I know, yeah. I know. That's the trim version. Yeah, I do like to go on. So it's good that you've trimmed it down a bit.
No worries, mate. Well, hopefully you can share with us some of the wonderful things you're doing. And for a little bit of context before we dive into it, I just thought I'd share how you and I crossed paths. And that was at the Run Grateful event hosted at Bondi Beach, where we did 1 mile every hour for 24 hours. And that was to increase the awareness for mental health issues. It brought a group of people together who didn't know each other to share some stories, rub shoulders, support each other through something which for some could be very, very difficult. I found it a little bit difficult myself through the middle of the night, muscle tension, but we all had each other to lean on. And what was your takeaway from that event, mate?
Oh gosh, where do I start? I mean, look, how I got involved was a bit of a sliding doors moment, actually. I knew Trent Knox from the 440 Club. If you live anywhere near Bondi, you have to know good old Trent. He's an absolute legend. And so I had a sort of link with Trent, but it actually came from an English guy who used to work, his name is James, he used to work in Paramount Rec Club in the Surrey Hills. And he had actually moved back to London. And he and I had kind of like been chatting about how we could do some work together with Nimbus. He knew what I was doing. I knew what he was doing. He now works with Soho House. And then he emailed me out of the blue and said, I've got this mate in London called Mark who's coming over to Bondi. He wants to do this thing. And I thought you'd be a good guy to, connect with. And it was literally that. So I emailed him, and not to sound too high horsey here, but I get a lot of requests and collaborations and things like that all the time, but that was just one that just stuck really, really well. Sent Mark an email, he jumped on it straight away. We had a bit of a chin wag online, and then that was it. And then I felt very integrated into Run Grateful just generally, because he ended up staying in our Nimbus Airbnb in Bondi, and so I was kind of very clued into the lead up of the event itself in the background. But he and Trent were very much the boots on the ground, and I was just kind of supporting in the background. So, but then to be honest, I wasn't even until I showed up on the day, I wasn't really sure what the heck the bloody thing was. And trying to explain it to somebody was even harder. Like, so what, you're doing a 24-hour marathon, but you're not running it consistently? I was like, no, we're running it on the mile, on the hour, every hour on what, but people don't talk about miles here in Australia. So that confused people even more. So it really was kind of going into your, getting out of your comfort zone. Like, I'm a runner myself, generally. I play soccer. I was playing semi-professional up until about a year ago. So I was pretty fit, but then I'd moved to Brisbane. So I didn't even live in Bondi anymore. That was another complexity about this whole thing, that I was trying to help organize this Bondi event that I didn't even live in Bondi for. So I had to fly back down for it. But yeah, it was just amazing. And then it was probably a good thing that I didn't know too much about it to go in. My expectations were just really out in the open. And gosh, was like blown away by the experience. I mean, words cannot describe what went on in that 24 hours, and it left a very strong lingering legacy of gratitude, to use the word in question. And yeah, it was just one of those kind of one in a lifetime experiences that I'll just never forget.
Yeah, and I think it really emphasizes the importance of having that community or having connections and creating that safe environment for people to be able to open up and express the things that maybe they're not so comfortable talking about, because that's what I took away from it. These strangers were sharing these really big stories that, like, you don't go to a pub or to a venue or to a location in any context and meet someone and have them just share these big stories with you. So I was so grateful.
I remember the very first part of the format of the event was on the hour every hour. They kind of passed the baton to one of the guys that was there to share whatever their personal story was. And I'll never forget the very first one, I think it was, or maybe the second one, was Mick, who spoke about how he was divorced and his family lived overseas. And then when he went to visit them, his daughter fell. And when she fell, she didn't run to him. She ran to his ex-wife's partner. And that really hit me. I was just silenced when I heard that. And to hear someone share such an intimate, powerful story, which meant obviously so much to him, and also brought a lot of, I'm sure, sadness to him. Straight away, the walls just came down. And you're right, Steph, like, how often do you open up like that to complete strangers? And I often think of the Are You OK movement, which in theory I think is great. But again, if you were to ask anybody on the street, that you meet at a coffee shop, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm okay, yeah. No one's going to turn around and go, well, I'm actually really struggling with panic attacks. I've got severe anxiety. I can't leave the house. I've got chronic whatever. Like, no one's going to really open up like that on a whim. Conversely, though, what my dream is around mental health generally is one day we will be able to do that. And it is making strides. I'm having a lot more conversations with people now where I do actually say, how are you getting on? And they do honestly say, I'm not doing that great at the moment, mate. And I say, well, why? Oh, I'm having trouble with my partner or whatever it may be. Those conversations are happening a lot more. There's a lot of great movements out there. There's too many almost to speak about. The 440 is a good example. It's a running club, but really it's about bringing people together. And in the coffee that you have after that, you share amazing stories with people. There's also the One Wave Foundation, which is in Bondi every Friday morning. Same idea. And I'm also part of W Now, which is a men's group which meets every Wednesday all across Australia, which has a bit of fitness. We open up the floor to anyone to share anything, and then we have a coffee after. And again, it's guys of all shapes and sizes, literally just barriers coming down, talking about all kinds of everything from issues with their siblings to family life to work stresses, not being able to get a job, like you name it. And it is reassuring also to be able to see that other people are just having struggles like you are, because often I find through all my years of experiences in my advocacy around mental health is people often, including myself, think your own thing is you're suffering the worst out of anyone in the world. You know, your problem is the worst problem that, but in reality, you make it as relative to your own story as anyone else would. And how I learned that was I was also on an ABC show called Space 22 with 6 other Australians, and we all shared a mental health journey, and it was about art therapy and how we explored that. But some of the stories and some of the trauma that people that were involved in that on paper, let's say, far outweighed the issues that I had growing up, which was things around money and my mom had trouble with alcohol and things like that. You know, whereas there's other people who said when they wake up in the morning, they're disappointed because they're still alive, you know. Or one of the guys, Ray, said that his father shot his dog in front of him to teach him a lesson, you know. So when I was like, oh my God, like these stories are way more powerful than mine, but they're also not. They're relative to your own story. It's what you make them up. So I've had the luxury to be involved in a lot of these environments, and Run Grateful was another one of those. And we had guys who were maybe the youngest guy there was 19, 20, maybe, right up to maybe people in their 50s. And but you really had to surrender to it. I had an injury with 9 miles to go. My knee blew out, and I'm still struggling with it actually since I've got osteoarthritis off the back of it. So I think all the stop starting actually like went against me. I'd never really done that for that duration before. And so I had to really surrender. I felt like I had that old feeling of, oh, you failed, weakness, what, you know, you couldn't complete it, blah, blah, blah. And that was going through my head. And I'll never forget Mark just put his arm around me and said, mate, just surrender to the process. This is what cards you've been dealt today. And then everybody got in behind me. People were walking with me. And it actually ended up being quite a lovely end to it. So I learned so much about that personally, you know.
Yeah. And mate, we haven't even really started the actual, you know, questions that we want to dive into. But I think some of the things you've just hit on is such a great way to sum up what I think you guys are trying to do and what we're trying to do. And that is to allow people to be in a better place. And if I'm in a better place because I'm working on me and I'm doing my wellness practices and I'm, you know, dealing with whatever it is that's going on in my life, then hopefully I can show up a little bit better for others and I can listen. Then I can sit there and I can have that empathy and I can support them, even if it's just listening. So, so at the moment, you've got a lot going on. You shared with me when we had a chat a little while ago. What's your real passion project at the moment that you're focusing on?
Well, it's also, you've touched on a note there where I do have a gripe generally just with, I was going to say wellness, but maybe it's broader than that with just humanity. But, you know, often a lot of people, even when they think of me, they think, oh, you know, you're killing it, you're doing all this. And on the front of it, that might come across like that. But what we try and do, particularly with Nimbus, is be extremely real about things, and especially when it comes to wellness. And for me right now, things aren't that great at the moment. You know, we've had a load of different challenges thrown at us from a family perspective. We lost our dog last week. You know, it's been really tough and challenging few years off the back of COVID with business. So it has not been easy. It's been probably the toughest couple of years we've had. And I probably haven't been training or doing as many of those things as I was maybe back in corporate days. And, you know, and less of a routine when you're running your own business, and we've moved interstate. I mean, there's just been so much turmoil in our lives that I literally, like, you just feel like the whole world is against you. So the first thing I want to say is anyone that listens to this, no matter who it is that you're listening to, always take it with a pinch of salt, because you're only seeing one side of what the story is like. And that's why I like to be very transparent that, like, I hope, you know, I can give advice and support people, but I'm also just a normal person as well. And at the moment, it feels like things are going against me, and I'm trying to stay positive, but I have bad days. But as you go through your own journey and experience, you gather tools, you know, and I call it, like, the more tools in your toolkit, the better equipped you can have. So Yeah, that I just wanted to kind of state that straight off the bat that I'm not perfect. I eat burgers, I eat chocolate. I'm not training as much as I am. My sleep could be improved. Like, there's loads of things I'm working on. Like, so if you think I'm doing okay, I'm fucking not. I underneath the iceberg, the feet are going a million miles an hour. So you're not alone if you are out there listening to that. To answer your question now, in terms of passion projects, look, I do have my own mental health podcast called These Lads Are Mental. Uh, we're on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment. We've done 2 seasons, nearly 40 plus episodes. Gary is about to have my co-host, a child. You know, and I moved to Brisbane and stuff, so we're kind of on a little bit of a hiatus. But that's definitely something that I want to get back into. And that was just a wonderful experience to interview 40 different Australians and even international guests. It was just phenomenal. And then Nimbus is the big baby, as it were. And I suppose from a Nimbus perspective, we started as a service studio-based business. We were the first infrared sauna studio in Australia. We have 4 locations across the country. But post-COVID, we realized that when you're in the service game, you know, there's a kind of a cap on what you can do in terms of like offering to people. So we decided, well, how can we take the Nimbus experience to people when they're not in the studio? And then that born the launch of kind of a Nimbus Online, Nimbus Wellness side of our business, which was exploring e-commerce and also content and education so that people could have a piece of Nimbus, whether they were at home, on the go, in work. And that's kind of really evolved rapidly since just the turn of the year this year, where we now sell infrared saunas and ice baths into people's homes and businesses. We're now doing bespoke saunas and wellness solutions into residentials and commercial buildings. So if people don't want our saunas off the shelf, you know, from our range, we're now designing them to specification for the client, which is amazing. And like, if you had asked me this 2 years ago, would you be building bespoke saunas in people's home? I would say absolutely not. But we're just about to finish one in Byron Bay, you know, for a lovely family there who have a stunning location, and we put a sauna in there. So it's really kind of, now it's starting, that's really gets us excited, because now we truly can bring Nimbus to people no matter where they are. And hopefully that will grow into international markets. So whether you live in Ireland or India or Singapore, or whatever it may be, maybe you can have a Nimbus sauna in your home or office space. And the good thing about saunas is that the research is just flooding out at the moment about how good it is. You know, the kind of the most common big ticket one at the moment is if you can do about 40 minutes to 45 minutes of saunas per week, it reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and most venereal diseases by up to like 40-50%.
Wow.
So, and then when you throw in an ice bath with that as well, you're even adding more into the mix in terms of longevity, the nervous system, mental health. I mean, those 2 alone, and if I had to pick a third, I would probably throw breathwork into that. They're 3 things that are, you know, largely accessible, affordable. Some are even free. It's free to breathe, right? So if you can get a bit of a mix of them into your life, you're doing pretty good, you know. And then the benefits I describe, if you classify all those 3 things in a bit of an X and Y axis, you know, if you come and do them on a one night only, you will get benefits from them. If you do them consistently over a long period of time, you're going to get a whole raft of other benefits on top of it. And that's the magic mix. And that's really what we're all about at Nimbus, which is preventative healthcare. You know, good on you if you go to a session and all that, but if you do something, no matter what it is, whether it's Pilates, yoga, if you do it consistently, you're going to see long-term benefits. And that's really what we're trying to achieve, hopefully at one point globally.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
That's great.
I know Steph and I have done a lot of saunas and ice baths in the past. It's something that we both love to step into, and the breath work too. Like it's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm sure that from a sort of semi-professional, I know you're in soccer in the past, that a lot of professional sports people use it for recovery with their ice baths, and that can be phenomenal. Is that sort of really what helped you step into it? The fact that you were using it from a sporting, or was it more just your health side that actually helped prompt you into this? is tough.
I would say both, because Sue, my wife, is a nutritionist by trade. And then when I met her, there was a whole raft of health things that she picked up pretty much straight away. And things like flatulence, I didn't put on weight that much, feeling tired and lethargic all the time. Whereas I just thought, that's me, that's just who I am. I never even thought about it, but she was like, that is not normal, those kind of things that are going on. So I went down the path of seeing a couple of different specialists. I had blood tests, stool tests, you name it. I did everything. And I did get back. And so, look, there was some family knowledge that was passed down the lines in terms of autoimmune. My granny had thyroid issues. My mum has arthritis. Like, there were some stories that I was aware of, but that was all confirmed basically when I went and did all those tests. But the thing that I wasn't aware of was the MTHFR condition, which is the motherfucker gene, they call it, which is seven. I always do my best to try to explain it as a non-science or medical person, but basically you can get it genetically from your parents, and I have it from both my parents. And when you have that, it's basically you've got a 70% loss of function in methylation in your body. So I struggle to absorb folic acid, which comes from vitamin B's. And what are the two main side effects of poor methylation? Mental health conditions, cardiovascular disease. And my grandfather died of a heart attack. He was a decent age, but so like it just all started to make sense with me. And then if you throw in environmental things, like I'm from Ireland, we drink a lot, eat a lot of gluten. The first thing I was told was no more gluten and you shouldn't drink. I was like, look, I'm happy to do all the other stuff, but I don't think I can do that. That was a scary thing to be told. And this was going back probably at this point, maybe 7 or 8 years, I'd say. Fast forward to today, I don't really drink that much at all now. It's more of a life decision. And, with the history of alcohol in my family, I kind of feel like there's a dark cloud there anyway that is kind of always on the horizon, that if I ever did go down that route, I wouldn't feel fully secure. So it was kind of, I had all those health things, autoimmune, and this is in my beard is actually alopecia areata, where a lot of people think it's just I'm going grey, and I've been lucky to get a bit of cool grey in my beard, but that's actually an autoimmune condition. And I had another condition called lichen sclerosis, which I won't go into too much detail, but it was another skin-related issue in an area that you don't want to know about. And that also kind of reared its head about 4 or 5 years ago. So I was getting, it was basically worlds colliding. And then I was also playing semi-pro soccer, and we'd research infrared. Sue was working in a clinic in Potts Point where they did have an infrared. It was called Health Space. And one of her early mentors was a guy called Nick Wood, who was a very intelligent chiro. He's one of the leading chiros here in Sydney. He's an amazing guy. And she drew a lot of inspiration from Nick. But what we noticed about the infrared sauna in that clinic was that it was used as a kind of a post treatment. You had an issue, you should do infrared as part of your protocol. Whereas we thought, well, if we flipped it on its head and said, well, why can't an infrared sauna be like Pilates or yoga, which each in their own story at some point would have been seen as a bit out there or not that common. But now fast forward to today, everyone has yoga or Pilates in their routine if you're into your wellness. And we thought, well, sauna should be the same. And when we researched the studies about it, and we were like, gosh, how is nobody doing this in Australia? And it wasn't a new thing. Infrared is just a light on the light spectrum, whereas the other end of the spectrum, you've got X-ray. Like infrared is invisible. It's, largely very safe, low EMF. And it was really just about trying to make it accessible, affordable, and create a lifestyle brand around that where we could normalize it as a preventative form of health and health modality. And that was it, but to kind of come full circle on my football days, I was playing at that semi-pro level up until I think I was nearly 39. And that can't be coincidence. Yes, I looked after myself pretty well, but I would do saunas 2-3 times a week when I was in the height of my soccer days as a recovery tool, and then ice baths more towards the last few years. And it can't be coincidence that I lasted that long. I probably got another 2 or 3 seasons, I would say, on top of the average player because I did that. And I used to get a lot of, like, I used to get paid out a lot by, I'd be going in for a corner in the game and someone would say, oh, someone marked the old bastard, like I'd get all those comments, but then I was saying, well, I'm still here. I'm still playing, MPL 3, MPL 2 in Sydney and Melbourne and places like that. Like, so, I think if everybody did it, obviously your improvements are incremental and stand your own story, but I think it definitely prolonged my football days for sure.
In case I'm putting you on the spot, the science behind the infrared, like you've told us what it can do for us for our health benefits, but what is the actual, for the people who don't know much about this and, just for the education piece, what is it that's happening when I step into that infrared sauna? Like, how does it actually, is it external heat? Is it internal heat? Does it heat the inside out? Like, what is it that it's doing?
I love this question because quite often what I get asked is, oh, what's the difference between a traditional sauna and an infrared sauna? Because the knowledge base on a traditional sauna is a little bit more common because of Finnish saunas, and they've been a little bit more ubiquitous than, let's say, an infrared sauna has. And saunas have been around for millennia. Like this is the other thing. Like these, like saunas go back thousands of years in all across different cultures. So it's really only in the last, it was the Japanese that kind of started using infrared as a health modality in saunas in this 1970s. So even still, it's still got about 50 or 60 years worth of use case in the community or society. But what goes on, look, there's loads of ways you can describe it. A traditional sauna, to put it in contrast, uses convectional heating. So heats the air around you. That's why it's hard to breathe in the traditional sauna, because literally that heating process zaps oxygen out of the air. That's why it's always harder to breathe in the traditional sauna. So it's heating the air, and then the air then heats your body up. An infrared sauna, though, is completely different. It uses infrared wavelengths. They're invisible to the naked eye. There's three main types: mid, near, and far. And they're just various different frequencies that penetrate your body at different wavelengths. So some of them only penetrate as far as your skin. And that's why certain types of infrared are great for skin health. Others penetrate your body at a cellular level. And that's really the key difference with infrared. It's basically switching your cells on. So it's not so much about hitting you from the inside out, which a lot of people hear. It's really just about infrared penetrating into your cells, and then your cells starting to work. And really what your body is going through is this exercise. It's a false exercise mode. It's the same kind of experience you would get if you were doing a workout. Let's say, your cells vibrate on a very minuscule level, and it's called vasodilation. So your cells are shaking, you're heating up, you're starting to sweat, you're starting to detoxify. So because of that kind of process, they say that in studies that anywhere from 20 to 30% increase in detoxification with an infrared versus a traditional. So you're getting a little bit more of that detoxification in an infrared environment. From an aesthetics or, let's say, user experience, because there's more oxygen in the air, it's more of a dry experience. So it's usually easier to breathe. It usually means you stay in longer as well. So our sessions at Nimbus are 45 minutes, whereas a traditional sauna, the average person normally does anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, because it's usually hotter. So if you like really hot heat environments, traditional is probably your better bet. If you want a slower detoxification process, infrared's kind of better, in my opinion. The other really interesting thing with infrared saunas, which is really starting to come out in the last year or so, is what's happening at that cellular level. So I was hearing all this amazing anecdotal evidence from friends of mine who had cancer, who were being prescribed by their doctor, mainstream doctors, to go get a sauna. And I was fascinated by this. I was like, what is this all about? And they're saying, well, if you're going through cancer treatment, and I'm not making any claims here whatsoever, so please, this is just anecdotal evidence. I want to be very, very clear about that. But they were using saunas as a way to kind of weaken your cells. And when your cells are weakened, and then you're having whatever your treatment is, whether it's nutrients, vitamins, all those kind of things, they have a greater impact on a weakened cell than they do on a fully formed cell. And that's the point I kind of just want to highlight, because when you're having a sauna, it's basically unfolding your cells because they're in a stressful environment. You're basically training your body to be able to adapt to a stress environment. And then when they close and heal afterwards, they heal stronger than they were before. So if you're doing that over and over again on a weekly basis, as I say, once, twice a week, you're just creating this beautiful elasticity from a cellular point, using my hands here, which is just strengthening your cells over time. So things like longevity and, as I said, reduction of chances of getting most diseases or common colds or things like that. You're just strengthening your body from a cellular level. And that's what I think is seeing a lot of this research is coming out now. There's 30-year studies that are showing how it's extending people's lives. It's, you know, people aren't getting as sick when they're doing it more regularly. And never mind just treating more isolated issues like pain relief or people who have trouble with insomnia, muscle recovery, skin issues, digestive system, immune boosting, like the list really does go on, which is great. And then probably the most recent phenomena in the sauna environment is this contrast therapy, or hot and cold, or fire and ice, has multiple names. And people say, well, what's the benefits of that? Well, the good thing about hot and cold, again, is how I describe it is like an accordion. You know, you're basically putting your body under a heated environment, then a cold environment, heated environment, cold environment. Again, you're just flexing your body from a muscular cellular level, like all the time, which is now showing loads of different benefits on top of just doing either a sauna or an ice bath, you know, singly. So it's really not going anywhere. You know, the research is just flying out. People are using it. Like Tony Robbins in America talks about how it's opened this huge door in America with obesity, because they've struggled to get people with obesity to exercise. It's hard to get someone who's morbidly obese to go for a run or a jog, or they might have joint issues and things like that. Whereas if you go into a sauna, you can just sit there. You don't have to do anything. But you get all these benefits with it, and it can kickstart you hopefully onto a journey of whatever it may be. So yeah, it's definitely here to stay.
I know from the homeostasis side as well, it's that beautiful ability for your body to learn more about how to sort of sit more evenly between that fight and flight and that rest and digest. And the more we learn how to flex that and get out of that constant stress that we're under all the time, like, the more easily we can kind of teeter-totter between the two, instead of being stuck in that kind of stress response all the time. Like you said, like flexing that hot and cold is also helping our bodies learn how to manage that, you know, that stress. If you put under stress and then take the stress away and have it go, oh, okay, and sort of reintegrate again, it's really fascinating how that works.
Well, I would say, like, if you think about a sauna on a very basic level, like when you come into let's say one of our studios, you're in a room, then you're in a box. You're in a box where nobody can disturb you for at least 45 minutes. How many things in your day can actually offer you that? Never mind any of the health benefits, right? But just think about being in that space. I don't think there's anything quite like that anywhere that can offer you that same level of experience. Sure, you can go and do other mindfulness things, like you can do yoga and things like that, but you're still being stimulated by a group of people, a teacher, maybe 20 others in a room, certain smells, scents, visual aids, all those kind of things. When you're in a sauna, it's really just you know? So you can completely switch off from the external world. And I often find the only other time I really feel like in the same headspace is when I have a massage, where you always leave a massage going, I really need to do that more often because I don't spend enough time in that space. And blokes are the worst for this, you know? Whenever we get a spare moment, it's like, I have to go for a run. I have to go to the gym. I have to go meet the boys for a beer. I haven't met him in ages. You usually circle around those things all the time, whereas we don't spend enough time in the, you know, the yin and yang, where we're in that rest and digest, where we're actually taking time to be more. We're not good at that. We just aren't. It is slowly shifting, but we need, and like maybe I'm getting a bit sentimental in my old age. I turned 40 this year. Now I'm starting to appreciate. That's probably one thing in my sports career that I didn't do enough of early on, was that kind of recovery, mindfulness point of view. I did the saunas, yes, and the ice baths, but I didn't spend enough time doing breath work. Even just going for walks, low impact, low stimulus activities, you need it because your body needs to recover. And I now have a Whoop, and that's really put that onto another level for me because it holds you very accountable of what you're doing, or in some cases what you're not doing. So yeah, my only advice there would be it doesn't make you, especially as a guy, any less strong, or it doesn't make you weak if you go and do these things. If anything, I guarantee it will improve your overall performance. And I know like the likes of Sydney Swans, like they have Rory Warnock, who we know, Steph, is their official breathwork coach. Like all the professional athletes are investing in this space because they know about the importance of it. And also from a psychological point of view, you need to have a strong mind as well as a strong body to perform at that elite level, you know?
Absolutely. And like, that's one of the things I think I love the most, especially about ice baths, is that when you're in an ice bath, you can't be anywhere else but right now. Like you are fully present, and you have to be in your body. You can't be tomorrow or yesterday. You have to be right now because it's so all encompassing. And it's that ability to just really be with yourself and be in your body. It's fascinating how practices like that, they kind of force us to have to be in the present. And it's a mindfulness practice all of itself without even trying, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, look, from an ice bath perspective, the two biggest things I get out of it are muscle recovery. You know, I used to, after a game or after training, it was a great, especially when you get older. Sometimes I'd be stiff as a goat, on a Friday night, do an ice bath, and I'd play a game the next day and I'd feel great. But the big thing for me is the nervous system shock that an ice bath gives you. So the mental health benefit, because what happens when you go into that cold environment is that they call it the dive effect. Your body thinks, okay, I'm in a stressful environment here. I'm in the fight or flight mode. I need to regulate my nervous system. So you'll notice the first 30 seconds, normally, if you go into an ice bath, you get that, and that's a sign that you're in that fight or flight mode. By you regulating your breath work, again, you're training your nervous system to deal with that stressful environment. And as you say, all you can do at that point is pick a spot on the wall, focus on your breath, and that's all you're doing. It's a form of meditation in my mind. Same thing as if you're in meditation, you're thinking about your mantra, you're not thinking about anything else. And if you're focusing on one singular thing like that, all the worries of your normal day can't come in that moment. And if you're doing that regularly, you're just, for anyone that's not accustomed to meditation from a Vedic perspective, but it's like the levels of the ocean. So if you're doing these mindfulness things, you might not notice it. Like you could do one meditation or whatever, or go to one class and go, I was all right, but I didn't really get that much out of it. Sometimes I hear things like that, but it's the levels of an ocean. So if you do those things regularly, you're bringing your levels down all the time in the background. And you might have a little reaction, someone in work might have a go at you, or a bit of trauma happens to you and your levels go back up again. But the thing is, if you're bringing your levels down regularly, consistently, when you do have those traumatic things that happen to you, your levels are low anyway, so you're not going to spill over the edge. Whereas if you're not doing them, your levels are right up here. So then you have a shitty email from a boss, and then you go into this triggering, spiral off one thing. So that's the easiest way for me to explain that's the importance of doing this stuff, is keeping your waters low, because you don't want to be triggered by, and I know, because I was case in point, I get triggered by people say things to me like, oh, you look a bit tired today. And I go, what? I look a bit tired? What's wrong with me? Like, and then I go into this insecurity. So I know what it feels like to be in that space. And yeah, by doing those mindfulness things, you might not necessarily know it in the moment, but I guarantee if you do them consistently, there'll be some point 12 months down the line where you'll just think to yourself in the mirror, gosh, I actually haven't been feeling that bad lately, or and then you'll go, oh yeah, it will just, a light switch will go on going, it's because I've been doing all that regularly. And when you start getting feelings like that, that's when you know you're in a really good space,
And what I love is, I'll first start with what I don't like. I don't like medication. I don't like taking anything that I don't need to take. Like, unless if it's a real problem, then what I love about the therapies that are available, whether it's ice baths, breath work, exercise, even fasting, like on the more, side of the dieting. These things, they don't necessarily cost us, that money of, or the alternative is you're distressed, you're anxious, you got these problems and you take a tablet, like it really is in some ways, and I don't know if that's the right word to say, it's free in some ways. Like it's not free to go and get an infrared sauna, but it's a much healthier option. So it's free of chemicals, I guess, free of putting crap in our system, and it's more about treating. So hopping in an ice bath, creating that stressful environment so the body can do its thing afterwards. Fasting for a period of time, same thing. The breath work, I went and did a sound healing recently, and the breath work that we did was to get us into a stressful state so that afterwards we could then come back down and go back into that relaxed state. Like it costs money to go do that, but still it's a much better option for me, in my opinion, than paying for medication, that's for sure.
Well, the good thing is, and Australia is similar to Ireland in this sense from a societal point of view, but if you took 10 years ago, even less, 5 years ago, when I was in my old corporate job, there was very much that environment of drinks on a Friday, everyone, you hit your targets, you get rewarded, you go to the pub. And look, those days were great, I won't lie about it. But I think COVID put people's wellness into perspective. I think people realized life is too short. People lost loved ones. It was an awful time. And I think people started to prioritize their own health and wellness. And a lot has changed, I think, in those last few years. People are starting to spend money on things like gym memberships and saunas and more mindfulness, which is great. And I think there has been a real shift in that perspective. People are valuing wellness a lot higher than they used to be 10 years ago. So that's a really positive thing to do. Your point about taking something, look, I've been down that road as well. When I struggle with anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. Lovely trio, great things. I've had depression for as long as I know as a teenager, and funnily enough, I often describe depression as probably the least that's the least I worry about. Like, I know that sounds crazy thinking about that, but anxiety and panic attacks are far worse in my opinion, and that's something that I'm having to control even right up to today. But there was a period when I was in a high stress environment, working in corporate, killing it, hitting targets, like nailing pitches, bringing in millions of dollars, all this kind of stuff. But then my water levels were boiling over, as I mentioned. And it got to a point where I was seeing a psychologist. Then I got prescribed beta blockers, which is basically just blocking the synapses in your brain to get into that kind of stressed or anxious environment. So that's not good for you to be taking that regularly. I also had Valium as well. So there were some meetings where I'd have to take a beta blocker, then I'd take a Valium just to get through a meeting. And I never wanted to take medication either. I swore I'd never take antidepressants. I'm never going to go down that road. I can, cure myself, as it were. But I had to at that point to get through that phase. And then I just woke up one day going, mate, I can't keep doing this. So I kind of completely stopped all that. And it was really funny because it was really things like gratitude and stuff like that, where you've got to fill your cup back up. You got to fill your self-esteem back up somehow. And for me, exercise, all those kind of things were almost like a form of escapism, And I talk about this quite a lot. Like, you can be addicted to things that are good things as well as bad things, It could be running or cycling or tennis or whatever it can be. Food, like I've found myself to be, I have a very touchy relationship with food. Food makes me happy. Like, it makes me safe and comfortable. Which is very strange to say, but I feel my happiest when I've got a full plate on my. If I sat down and I'm watching something I like and I'm eating my dinner, that's where I feel most secure. And exercise and all that was a form of escapism for me for many, many years, for a large chunk of my life. When you try to change all that and try to fill your cup back up, it is actually quite difficult. It's very overwhelming. You start thinking about everything that's going on. Awareness for me initially actually was a negative thing. I felt like there was a million things swirling around my head going, you've got imposter syndrome, you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're not the best at the sport. all those things going around. You've got mummy issues, you've got this issues, you've got, and I was like, oh my God, like this, there was a bit of ignorance is bliss, like,
Yeah.
Um, but I started doing this amazing work with a men's coach about 2 years ago, Dara Byrne. He was also an Irish guy. He now lives in Bali, but he was in Australia for many years. And he just basically, how I saw my relationship with him is he just handbraked me big time, and he taught me loads of tools to be able to deal with some of the things I was coping with. And it was kind of the first time I started to take charge a bit. And awareness post the work with Dara actually gave me control and choice. So I was able to just be in a mindset of, okay, Neil, this is just your anxiety. This is not you. You can park it and you can move on. It's not there it doesn't determine you. So it is about going through that bit of a bell curve to come out the other end. And I'm by no means out the other end. And that was the other thing, you're not cured. There is no cure, even if you think about a panic attack is actually your body trying to help you to go, something is not right here, mate. You need to do something about it. And when you start thinking about panic attacks in that way, and I call them pannies now, like, it's just like, and I'm very transparent. I'm like saying no to things. Like my best mate asked me to be the MC of his wedding about 2 years ago. And when he asked me, I got that, oh my God, I can't on stage and do that. And I said no to him, which was a decision I still stand by today, even though I would have loved to do it. But it just, at that period, I wasn't ready to do it. So yeah, for anyone that is listening that is struggling with that kind of stuff, don't give up, keep going. You will come out the other end. And even when I think of things like psychologists and things like that, people go, oh, I went to see someone, he was terrible, or blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's going to happen, but you're going to have bad restaurants, you're going to have bad coffee, you're going to have bad managers. It doesn't mean you're stopping work or you're stopping drinking coffee, does it? No. So if you get a bad psychologist, bin them, move on, try another one. If they don't work, bin them, move on until you get someone that's right. So yeah, there's, to try and end that on a positive note, I've been through it all myself, and you will get there. There was times where I thought, God, I don't know whether I'm ever going to see light at the end of the tunnel, but now I'm in that space where I'm seeing that a lot more than I used to.
And do you find that there are some sort of habits or routines that you've employed that have really sort of helped keep you grounded and more on track? I mean, I know you mentioned so many different tools that you use with your sort of more mindfulness and meditation practices, and of course the sauna and the ice bath. But I'm just wondering if you've got something that you like to sort of lean back into when you're finding things start getting a bit rocky for you.
Yeah, look, there's some basic fundamentals, and again, you can't go away from stuff that's essentially free. Gary, who's my co-host on These Lads Are Mental, he's basically a sports psychologist or physiologist. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's really into the sciencey part. And he always talks about sleep. Normally, anyone that's struggling, generally, if you ask them, if you prod them, and that's why there's a responsibility, not necessarily just on you, but for the people around you, which in turn is why it's so important to tell people about your environment, because if you don't, no one can spot any indicators of when you're not in a good place. So if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, whatever it is, and everybody around you knows about it, they're likely to see the signs before you are. You just think, oh, I'm fine, leave me alone, but they'll notice, oh, Steph hasn't been coming out as much anymore as he used to, or he's a bit snappier than he used to be, or he's drinking a bit more. Other people notice that more than you. So I would say, firstly, it's definitely tell those around you. It's the scariest step. It's the first step, but it's the most important step. Secondly, sleep. It's a building block for just general well-being. If people are struggling with things, normally when you ask them a question, they're not sleeping well. If you're not sleeping well, your body's not resting enough, and you're not going to perform better. You're not going to wake up with a good mindset. You're not going to be able to be there for your family or loved ones or whatever, or sports. And then that has a triggering effect. So sleep is a building block for overall well-being. Obviously, nutritional plays a good part of that, but I try not to be too strict on that because I eat burgers, I eat chocolate, like those things are never going to go away. I don't have a six pack like I used to have, but I often find people who are super strict on the other end of the spectrum, as I said, are kind of almost addicted to that kind of that side of things. So there is like, you can go both sides of the spectrum. And I think the key is just balance, 80-20 rule. I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel there. But on a daily basis, if I'm struggling, cold showers or an ice baths are a really great way to just take your focus away from stress or anxiety. They are just a super thing to do. Also, if you're overthinking, I often find exercise is a really good thing to do. So go for a run or even just go for a walk, go for a sauna, and we did a great episode on my show before about talking about micro moves make macro changes. So quite often when we're struggling or we're in a bad space, we think, oh, I can't get through. I've got this thing going, that thing's happening. We think about the end before we can get there. But it can be as basic as the getting out of bed. Like when you wake in the morning, you've got a choice. You can hit the snooze button or you can get up. If you get up, already there's your first win for the day. If you make your bed, you go have a shower, you have a cup of tea, all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 wins in. You've got up an hour earlier than you did before. Like you're already on that, and that has a snowball effect. If you consistently do that, that will drive overall macro changes for you. So that's another thing. Sometimes when I get a bit in my own headspace, I just think, a lot of people talk about living in the now. I know that's kind of used quite a lot now, but just what can I do right now? What do I have control over? I can control my sleep, I can control what I eat, and I can control what I do today. And if you just think about that in a very basic level, you will get through. And no matter how bad you feel on a day, and that's what I'd always love to have this conversation with anyone that unfortunately has taken their own life. But I often feel when that does happen, I just think, gosh, if they just had got through that day, that one single day, maybe things could have changed. And that's probably easier said than done. Of course, I understand that. But, I've had those dark days before. But if you can just get through that next day, things can change. And as I said, if you get those habits moving, it can snowball in the right way,
So, mate, you've shared a lot. You've spoken about some of the struggles that you have with, managing work and the changes in COVID and the business and how it's evolving, and you're still working on products. And then you've spoken about your own personal health and the things that you have to do there. And then we've spoken about how health and wellness, like the practices that we can do. If someone was on top of all of that, if someone's working to, say that I'm on path right now, do you actually know what success looks like for you? If you're ticking all those boxes, you're juggling the right things, you're taking care of your health, is there something that is defined as success in your life, in your journey?
Oh, that's a good question, because that's probably something that I've battled with for sure. It brings me back to my working with my psychologist, when I think historically I've struggled a lot with that in terms of when will I be content, And I remember he asked me once, when will you be content? And I said, well, I suppose when I'm 80 and I'm sitting on my porch and the grandkids are running around and, we're having a laugh. And he said, so you're going to wait until you're 80 until you're content? And I was like, oh, fuck. I didn't think about that. So what I've been trying to do in that sense is to really try and enjoy the moments, because before, and I am getting a bit more nostalgic, and, my football days are over. I used to complain sometimes about football, all this thing or that thing and stuff like that. Before you know it, it's done, it's dusted, it's finished. And especially when you have children as well, like I've got a 2.5-year-old son, and it all puts it into perspective. But you don't have to wait until that to realize that. So I think for me, it would be really about enjoying the moment, be grateful, knowing that, I live in one of the luckiest countries in the world. I have an amazing lifestyle. Yes, there's stresses, more stresses than ever, probably in the last 2 years. But I've really tried to flip the switch on it and think, well, fuck it, like I've nearly gone bankrupt, when you start going, well, if I do, I do. Like, what's the worst thing that, I'm not going to die if I become bankrupt. I'm not, luckily we have family support. Luckily, Australia is a great place. There's welfare. I could get a job. There's so many different things I could do. So when you start taking the control away from those things, and you go, well, like, come at me, like what can stop me, And unbeknownst to most people, especially even living in Australia, if you're an average person in Australia, you're in a very top percentile globally in terms of humans, in terms of lifestyle, society, things like that. So it's really just about looking inwards, realizing, and like I used to think gratitude, things like this was a load of wank, is a gratitude. I don't believe in that. Like it's bullshit. But when you think about it, like I spend a lot of time in the negative space, what I did, I think like maybe there's a little bit about Irish history in that. We always drink away your worries, brush everything under the rug, But like we talk about the tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. Ireland, it's like 100 times worse. If someone does good, they go fucking dickhead, No one, I find Australia is very supportive. If you want to start a business or do a job, people go for it, mate. Like I find Australians are quicker to kind of just take a chance, push on, and people will support you. So I've spent a lot of time in the negative. Like no matter what I did, I always used to think could have been better. I didn't nail that presentation, yada, yada, yada. And that's when you start realizing with gratitude, if you're thinking about that all the time, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not. So if you're constantly saying you're shit, that was poor, you did bad, you're your subconscious is just consuming that over and over and over again. And this is where gratitude remedies that, because if you're doing the opposite, and it could be in any shape or form, you could be looking in the mirror and just saying things out loud. You can write things down. There's loads of different things. But if you're saying that out loud, that's going into your subconscious. You're now consuming that. Your body is now going, well, you are good. You are cool. And there are a couple of those lovely little neural pathway resetters that I do. I just finished one a while ago where I did 30 days of, I brush my teeth with my right hand because I'm left-handed. I said, I love you into the mirror 10 times. And then I did 25 really deep, sharp breaths. And I did that at the beginning of every single day before I did anything else. And that was, again, completely free. It took me about 3 minutes to do that as an exercise. But if I wake up, and it helped me most when I was if I woke up in a bit of a tizzy, stressed about something, you would just do that and you'd be snapped out of it immediately. So, yeah, I think gratitude has been a real big thing for me in the last couple of years, and just looking inwards, because I often looked outward for validation and things like that. And it's not to say I don't find myself in that scenario or will do ever again. Of course I will. It's a behavioral thing that I've picked up over years and years. But when you have that awareness, going back to awareness is control, I can then spot it, and then I can make a decision. Well, I can choose to be like that, or I can choose another way. And that's where you start taking back control.
Yeah, it's something that occurred to me a little while ago. I went through that exercise of, what is it that you want in life? What would be defined as success? Like, if I did all these things, then life would be grand and it'd be, a life of abundance. And I kept referring back to that, and I kept thinking about that. And then, the things on my list, I was actually living them, and I had them in my life already. And then it was just realizing how fortunate or being grateful for even waking up in the morning. Like, I've been given another day. I'm above the ground, not below the ground. I've got another opportunity to see what I can make of this life. And so it's just some of those things that have really resonated with me lately. It's just really
we're quite familiar as humans as
having that reflection.
Body dysmorphia, like thinking you're fat and things like that. Whereas we also have this life dysmorphia, which is not spoken about as much. We often think, oh, I wish things could be better. But when you, as exactly as you said, Steph, like if you were to actually just look inward, and it's a great exercise Dara gave me around self-worth, which was whenever you think like you're worthless, do this little exercise. All you need is a pen and paper. And just from the day you were born to today, it doesn't have to be exact, but just write down numbers of how many people you've touched in your life since the day you were born. Okay, so you're a family of 5, there's 5. I've got 30 cousins. I was in primary school, 30 in the class, I was on a soccer team, just go through it bit by bit. You will end up in the millions, and so your life is worthwhile. You are impacting people all the time, and yeah, you just got to look inward. But that's a challenge. If you said to me, what would life be like? I'd go back to that porch, sitting on a porch with my grandkids, or like having a house with no mortgage, with a car that I like, and but in reality, when I actually drill down to it more recently, it's like maybe just living in Italy with no stress, or having a little coffee shop. It's not really about being successful or making millions of dollars. It's just about doing what you love. And if you do something what you love enough, people will come to that. You will be a master at it. And that's like a complete U-turn for me in my thinking, because I came from a scarcity factor, must succeed, need to get a promotion, have to get the next job, need money so I can be safe and secure. When in reality, that's not really, that doesn't align with any of my values at all. So yeah, you really have to go down that exploration. And look, that's different for everybody as well. Maybe money is the thing that you do want, and that's fine as well. But you really do have to find what that thing is for yourself. And if you're not vibing work, or then you need to do more work in this space. If you feel like it's not working, change your environment, change your job, do something else. Don't just sit there expecting things to change, because it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Do you have, like, for people who are sort of in that space where they're really unsure what the next step is, or how to kind of start making these changes in their lives, is there like a book or a documentary or something that you could recommend for people to help them sort of start on this journey to start sort of reclaiming that authentic self and really finding out what it is that really matters?
There was a few books that definitely helped me. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, I think is the author. That was an amazing book. That taught me a lot about myself, looking inwards, understanding my own psyche a bit more. It also challenged me, because there was a lot of things in there that I related to, going, oh yeah, that feels like a bit of me. But that really was a real, I suppose, pivotal moment in my own kind of self-healing. That book really kind of kicked me into gear, for sure. There was also another book on the subtle art of not giving a fuck, which I also found very supportive to me, because I spent most of my life worrying about what other people thought of me, and that then spiraled into this performance anxiety, like the wedding example that I mentioned. And so yeah, like those things can really take a hold of you. And I had a kind of a bullying incident in my corporate days 7 years ago, which I didn't realize at the time, but it actually triggered when I was bullied on the schoolyard when I was about 7 or 8. Like, I got bullied when I was a young kid. And then I kind of went through life building all these defense mechanisms about trying to be liked. I used to hate when people didn't like me, and I used to try and do everything to make them like me, which when I think about it is so cringy. I try and go, oh, like this guy would be an asshole, like treating me like shit. And I'd be trying to like be his friend. Like, it feels pathetic, but it's not. It's a defense mechanism that you're trying to do. So being able to like flip that and go, well, I don't give a fuck what people think. If someone says I look shit today, or I'm tired, well, I don't give a fuck. So I'm kind of in this other space where people think I'm like, everybody think I'm a dickhead. And I'm like, well, I don't care anymore. Like, and saying no to things is like, if it's not serving you in that moment, well then, like, say no. So those 2 books in particular that definitely gave me a lot of support, over the last 5 to 6 years. If documentary wise, Live to 100 is a pretty good one on Netflix. Like if you're just looking for, I dare say, a quick and easy like gateway to health. But if you look at that show again, to kind of come full circle on everything from sleep to nutrition to exercise, whether they're in Sardinia or Okinawa or wherever it may be in those blue zones, they all pretty much were talking about the same things. It was that sense of community, to belong in something. Yes, there was something nutritional based, but it varied depending on your culture. Having a purpose was a big thing. And I think in Okinawa, it was about gardening was the purpose, so tending to something on a regular basis. And then some form of exercise, which there's not really clear evidence that things like going to the gym or HIIT classes or high intensity cardio like necessarily prolong life. Yes, they make you fitter and things like that, but low impact exercise has been proven to prolong life. So things like just walking, it is a huge thing that, like, I definitely do not do enough. I don't do enough of just basic walking. And we were in a town called Now, which is in Sardinia, and is on the side of a hectic mountain where you have to drive 45 kilometers up to get to this space. And everywhere we looked, there was elderly people, old men, old women, and groups of them. Like, and they'd be walking in the street arm in arm. And we were thinking, God, that's adorable. It's very cute, But when I watched that show on Netflix, that town was one of the blue zones. I didn't even know, and when they spoke about it, that low impact, walking up steep hills at their own pace every day, that's why they have so many centenarians and people who live over 100. So yeah, that just get up and move. And it comes back to that, if you're having a shit day, just get up and move, do something, go for a walk, go for a coffee, go for a swim. There's I often talk about, if you're struggling with anything, the hard part is there's no silver bullet that's going to fix you. You can't just take a tablet and that's it, But on the flip side, there are so many things that can help you. And what will help me won't help you, Steph, or Katrin, or anyone else. It could be, I remember going and I did Vedic meditation thinking that would be it. If I could just do Vedic meditation, I'll be fine. I will never have anxiety again. And I don't do it regularly at the moment, but I have been tapping back into it, but meditation could change your world, Steph, for all I know, or it could be changing your job, could change my world. So there's loads of different things. So if something's not working, just move on to the next thing. And, something will stick, and you'll get through.
Yeah, mate. Well, look, we've consumed your time for a lovely part of the evening, and you've shared some great stories with us. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
No, I just think being in the wellness game, there is a lot of high expectations, a lot of toxicity, and it's easy to fall into that trap. I'm terrible at scrolling, absolutely shocking. Speak to my wife, she'll say I'm addicted to my phone. And it is, and especially when you're in the wellness game, it's a little bit like mental health. When you're in the mental health advocacy, all you hear about is mental health. So it does get all encompassing at sometimes. Same with wellness, I look at other people, and comparison is an awful, awful thing. If you're comparing yourself to people, that's a sign, in my opinion, that you need to work on your own self-esteem and self-worth. It's a big thing. And I find it so easy now with social media. You could be doing great. You could even be in a really great headspace, and you'll just open up Instagram for a second at 10 o'clock at night, just when you're in the loo or something like that, and you see someone has got a new job, or they've just been hired by Google or something like that, or they've got a Mercedes or something. You're like, oh, I always wanted a Mercedes. And then immediately you just go into this spiral. So don't be I'm also trying to make this as practical as possible. I know it's easy to say, don't go on social media. Well, I can't. But it is like wellness and things like that. Like there's a lot of crap out there. And Steph, your question earlier around like, well, what's success for you? Like success is relative to your own scenario. Like, success to me could be just being able to run a 5K just generally. But success to you, Steph, might be, getting a personal best in a triathlon or getting an Australian record or something like that. Like it is all dependent on your own scenario. So, look inward, see how you're going, like build goals. It's great to have goals. It's great to have targets to aim towards, but don't beat yourself up if you don't get there. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. And part of it is the journey, whilst, I do naturally tend to think about the negative a lot. They also provide great stories, like you like when you think, you just go, fucking hell, life is some killer, it does some crazy things to you and you just have to deal with it. And they're stories that you often joke about around the table in 10 years time. So yeah, don't, my last point would be like, nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. Hopefully I've shared a little bit of that to let people know that, like everybody struggles in various different ways. I'm in wellness and my diet's not right. I'm not sleeping enough. I could be training more. Like there's loads of different things I can do, but you just have to take it day by day and enjoy the wins, enjoy the moment, live in the now. That's the most exciting bit, because when you finally go to rest, whatever day that may be, those are the things that will stay with you in those last moments, the memories, the experiences, the highs, the lows. We've had a shocking few weeks. I dislocated my knee. We had the whole house had influenza for 14 days. My wife was bedridden. My son just came off the back of an operation, even though he's only 2.5. He had his adenoids removed. And we had tried to employ someone, and then after a week they quit. And then we lost our family dog on Tuesday. And it was just, one thing after another. But then, it's just part of life. It's just part of those things. And it's not to sound corny or cheesy, but it's just how you get on with them. It's how you react to them. And it's the memories. And like, I have actually felt a lovely sense of gratitude in the last few days since my dog died, because when I was younger, my grandfather died when I was 20, and I spent the whole summer in New York with all my friends. And when I literally rang him from Times Square the day before I left to come home after 3 months, because we were like best mates. And he was like, oh, safe flight, all the usual. And then when I got into Ireland, my dad picked me up. And when I got in the car, he said, Granddad's died. I couldn't believe it. And he literally died. He must have died almost after he hung up the phone to me, because he died at 8 p.m. I think it was 3 p.m. because I'll never forget, I looked at Times Square and had the big clock. And there's a 5-hour difference. So he literally must have just passed, and I just missed him. And then when he died, I got back for the funeral. I couldn't cry. And that's the thing. If you hold in your emotion, and I struggle with depression, I used to push everything down, didn't speak about everything. Everything was fine. I was trying to be liked by everybody. If you try and put up all that false walls, when you actually need to experience an emotion, you can't, because you've trained yourself to suppress everything. And then we'll fast forward to today, working on yourself, gratitude, all those things that we've spoken about. I cried like for 2 days straight with my dog. Even today, I was just texting before we got on this podcast. Chucky, who was our dog, try not to cry close enough. But he was water cremated. I didn't even know that was a thing, but he was water cremated. And they were asking us to send you a message and a photo, and I had a little cry again. Now, the reason why I mentioned that is like, I wasn't able to do that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like now I can, and emotions are good. Grief is part of life. They're all things, and you have to let them in. You have to soak them up. And sometimes grief is just part of the process. And so it is rewarding, like keep working no matter what your scenario is, because when you start finding yourself in those lovely moments where I'm able to cry is like at the drop of a hat, that's a lovely space to be in compared to feeling that I can't cry. So yeah, I've had a pretty shitty week, but just trying to laugh it off, brush it off. Here I am talking to you, amazing people, sharing a story. So like, these are all stories that I'm able to share and, you know, support people. So if anything, I wouldn't change him for the world. I'd love to have another day or a week with my doggo, but he was 13. He had a great life. He lived in Bondi. What more can you ask for, you know?
That's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's just been amazing having you on. You have such a wealth of experience, and I love all your stories. Like you said, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of all the good and the bad, because, you know, that's what makes us human, and that's what really helps us to be, you know, full humans as well. You know, I don't think any of us would be the same without some of those harder times. That's what defines us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what makes us. And we talk about being humans, but we don't talk a lot about being, you know, we're human beings, you know. So what are we doing on a daily basis? Like enjoying those moments, just being you, enjoying your family, whatever it is, like, and just live in that moment, savor those moments, because, you know, one day you will be 80, you know. So spend more time being than just being a human.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, mate. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. And I hope your week picks up from here on in.
Yeah, I think I need to do the lotto or something. Just to, you know, maybe all these things are happening for a reason. But look, I didn't believe in the universe really either. And like 5-6 years ago, I started seeing 7-7, 11-11. And then I was reading, what does this mean if you keep seeing all this? It means you're not listening to the universe. Then I started hearing my name, which apparently is the next thing. So Niels, I never came across a Neil in my life up until about 4 or 5 years ago. I was meeting Niels at a coffee shop. There's an Irish Neil in Bondi who I'm now really good friends with. And the reason why I knew him is they said, Neil, and I had to pick up my coffee. He said, that's mine. He goes, no, I'm Neil. And then we were both Irish. And we were like, what? And then my boss it was a Neil. And I was like, what is going on? So, you know, more recently, I'm thinking maybe the universe is trying to tell me something or tell us something. What that is, I've no fucking clue. I wish I could now. I wish I could get a fortune cookie going, mate, just do this and you'll be fine. No, it is hard sometimes when you're trying to battle like business life and you feel like sometimes you're pushing shit uphill. You really do. And you're like, I can't go on. But then on the flip side, if you look at it, like a great podcast as well to listen to is How I Built This with Guy Raz, which is, I got so much inspiration from that, especially if you're a business owner, because every single entrepreneur that's made a success has a ridiculous battle story. How they got messed around, this thing was a disaster, and that thing, and blah, blah, blah. So that's a very reassuring thing to know, because sometimes you do feel like giving up, but all the good entrepreneurs and business owners get to that point. And when you get to rock bottom where you don't care, if I go bankrupt, whatever, you know, that's when you start, like, that's when you're in the real power zone. That's when you're like, well, what can I do about this? And I have a little affirmation on my fridge on a piece of cardboard, which literally says, what are you going to do about it? And that just sits there. So sometimes it just catches my eye. I go, fuck, okay, I need to get my shit together. And you go again. So yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, it's all, I mean, look, things are going in a really positive space. As I mentioned, we're putting saunas into people's homes and building bespoke, you know, there's loads of amazing, great things happening. So yeah, it's more, you know, when you grow into another space or into your comfort, you go away from your comfort zone, there are challenges, you know, but that's what makes it, that's what it's all about. We're trying to lean into that, you know, into the future.
Thank you so much for tonight. It's been sensational. I know our listeners will. There is so much amazing information there that you've provided. So I know there's lots for people to really start digesting and thinking about. And we so appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, and look, there's so much more to talk about. If anyone needs any more information, you can find us, you know, online, and there's a lot, and you just have to Google research on saunas and things like that. There's lots of it. So yeah, I hope people got something out of it. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll put everything, all the ways that people can contact you in the show notes too, so that people can get in touch and reach out, because I'm sure they're going to want to find out a lot more about what you've been doing. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.